Hello, folks. So today I wanted to talk about dead code, dead infrastructure, and dead configuration. Right? Basically anything that is dead. So this can even be like. So let me give you examples for dead code. Right? Dead code, as in this can be in your any language, any programming language, any even CSS cascading style sheets in which, let's say you have some classes in cascading style sheets, and those classes are never used, right? Or they're not used in your project. So then you can just remove them from the cascading style sheets, the definition of those classes. And in code, any code that is not executed at all ever. And sometimes some code is only executed for tests, and in the production it is not executed. That is a weird kind of code. If you're just running tests for a code but you're not using that code, why is that code there? Is that code ever used in any configuration of the application? If not, maybe it can be removed. Same for infrastructure. You were using a Redis, but now you're not using the Redis anymore. You were using a RabbitMQ, now you moved to some other message broker or message queue system, say Redis or like Redis PubSub or Kafka or anything like that, right? And you have the RabbitMQ remaining there, just sitting there, not doing anything, not being used, with all the data and everything. It's better to just remove it if you have migrated all the data and you're not using it anymore and you don't need it anymore. So this is also helpful because when you have dead code, dead configurations, dead configuration as in, let's say in this case, you moved away from RabbitMQ and you started using Kafka, and in your configuration, say environment variables or configuration files, you have references to Kafka and references to RabbitMQ, but you don't use the references to RabbitMQ in the environment variables or in the configuration files or anything. And your code does not have, like, the latest versions don't have any use for the RabbitMQ related configuration, like say environment variables or configuration file properties and all, and it's not using it, then what's the point of it being there? Because the thing is, it's confusing for people who are like, reading this, say developers, people from the SRE team, infrastructure team, and all that, DevOps teams. So, and also when you use automation, then you'll have to use, let's say you want to run an automation which finds out what are all the applications that use a particular component, say RabbitMQ or Kafka or Redis. What and all can you look at? You can look at the network configuration. So you can check which application or which component is like connecting with which other component. So that is at the network level. That is the most and the best way, most preferred probably, and the best way, because that's how you know exactly they're connecting, and they have a long running connection, and this data being like this data that's being transferred to and fro, as this data moving between the two components, right? And this traffic, this data and the traffic and all that. It's not just some trying to connect and then the connection fails, or some authentication authorization fails and this just keeps happening. No, it's more like there is some data going between the two, so requests and response and whatnot. The other thing you would look at is configuration as in environment variables, configuration files and all. The other thing you would look at is the code. You would look at the dependency management system, where you will look at the dependencies or the packages or whatever you name it, like modules, libraries basically, that is used. So if there are libraries that are used around, say, RabbitMQ, then you will be like, okay, probably RabbitMQ is being used. The RabbitMQ client is being used, maybe because the RabbitMQ is being used. But it's possible that the code is not using it, but it's importing it just has the library in its system saying that import this library, but it's never used. As in, it's mentioned there, have the library, but it's never imported in the code or anything. And the other thing is, of course, usage in the code. Look at the usage in the code, ensure that it's not dead code and whatnot. So you will have to run such an automation. It's better to ensure that you don't have any dead code running around here and there. That way, such automations can make it easier to understand what is being used, what is not being used. But yeah, it's a hard thing. For example, in my company, we are currently looking at which applications are using, say, RabbitMQ because we want to upgrade the RabbitMQ. Similar thing we would do for, I think, we have done recently some upgrades for Redis, MongoDB. I think we would have looked for, this was before I joined the company. So, I mean, when they did this analysis, so I'm guessing they would have analyzed and understood which applications are using Redis, which applications are using MongoDB, which version of MongoDB that they're using, and what is the client version they're using. Now they're doing the same for RabbitMQ. They're looking at which client version of RabbitMQ they're using. So for the RabbitMQ client, say the library that they use in their code, and mostly it's Java code. So they will look at jar libraries, Java libraries. But yeah, if your company has different programming languages, different dependency management systems, then say you have Golang, then you look at all the go.mod files and things like that. So to understand what is the version of the client library, or you can call it package module dependency that you're using. So yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing when you want to do analysis. When dead code is there, it's going to be very bad and very hard to do analysis to understand what is being used, what is being done, what is happening. And not every company will have network level monitoring to understand which components are, connecting to which other component. Usually, you would have to have something like a service mesh of sorts to understand the whole network. Put a proxy in front of everything and let the services contact other services only through proxies. Then the proxy can be used to get all the data of which component is connected to which other component, and also be able to block and do control. So more like access control at network level. So network access control list kind of thing. So NACL, I think the AWS has that stuff and all that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, dead code is not a great thing to have. And yeah, I do wonder what people can do to find out if a component is being used, what is the version of the component that's being used, what is the version of the client of the component that's being used. For example, in case of RabbitMQ, what is the version of RabbitMQ being used? What is the client version of the RabbitMQ being used across all applications, regardless of what programming language? It's going to be a tricky thing to find out. I wonder if one can have like a generic specification for each and every application which tells about what is the component being used and what is the client version being used, and that can get converted into the programming language specific thing and whatnot. Anyways, but yeah, it has to be maintained, and like you should have it in a up-to-date state. Given a version, you should know what is running. Given a version of the application, what components are running for it, and what client libraries are being used in it and whatnot. So yeah, it's better to have no dead code. It's not an easy thing, but there should be automation and tools to find out dead code and remove them, and every team has to actively do this. Only then it's possible. So yeah, that's all I had for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.